How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today I've got number 9 in my favourite trucks video. I've been having a little play around with all sorts of different trucks. I'll be honest, just to clear a few things up first. It was originally going to be the ANK, that's what I kind of had my mind settled on. And I've been playing around with the ANK, the White Western Star, this thing, the Voron AE, a couple of ones earlier, and yeah, basically, I wasn't... The ANK, as fun as it is, I was rolling it quite a bit, and it's like, that usually is what ends up making me just send it back to the garage, and I'll take something else out. And I will sort of say as well, this thing is only really at this place. I probably would switch it with the collabs and have this at 10 and those at 9, but it's pretty irrelevant. Yeah, I do actually use it like a little bit every now and then. It has to have the all-wheel drive. Without that, it's... yeah, it wasn't like... I used to use it messing around doing the Jeff Special, flying down the runway and stuff, but I never really took it on any missions. But since the all-wheel drive, it's... yeah, to me, I just think it's been pretty decent, and even now, I mean, there's nothing I'm doing in particular. I set off for that mission, but I'm not too bothered about it. I just wanted to tow a piece of cargo. And just bear in mind there, obviously, I did this in, like, the tree killing video anyway. It doesn't smash through them trees too well, but we'll get to that in a bit. There's a reason why I left that bit in. Yeah, even going up there though, it's motoring along, and I know now it would technically, in this situation, taking 2 cargo, I'd be better off putting a sideboard on. I would do that in like my own time or whatever. I was just kind of doing this for my own curiosity and just seeing how well it'll do when it's not really got any weight planted on it. But I'm towing yeah, some cargo, and yeah, I've used this recently to fetch trailers and stuff. And sort of one of the reasons, like I said, the ANK, it was just rolling too much. I did lower the suspension on the ANK, and that definitely did help. It actually helps quite a bit, but because of that, you have to put the smaller tyres on it. And even though the smaller tyres are 47 inch, and I believe these are 47s as well, I just think this sits a little bit higher overall. But the other reason I settled on this, the Voron AE, by the way, I think is a better truck. I really don't like how slow the steering is, and I kept crashing it. And yeah, it's just one of them where I've used the Voron AE a fair amount on like Lake Coved, because on the ice there's plenty of room to steer slowly, and in the snow stuff goes pretty slowly anyway. But yeah, one reason I did sort of settle on this, I'm trying to think how to sort of explain it, but with the mechanics of this game, the highway trucks were obviously all just rear-wheel drive, and pretty much every other truck is like all-wheel drive, or at least all-wheel drive capable. And because of that, some trucks feel like they have artificial limiters, a bit like I showed in yesterday's CK video, where it should be better than that, but it's like it's been limited because it's a beginner truck, and some other trucks feel like, you know, they've been balanced for the sake of balancing, and it might be a little bit overdone on a particular, like, realistic aspect of the truck. But my point being that I believe some of the highway trucks didn't have they didn't need artificial limiters. That was, by the way, how long it took me to decide this wasn't number 9. Yeah, I feel like some of the highway trucks didn't need artificial limiters because they were limited by the actual fact that they didn't have all-wheel drive. Again, just another quick one. Hitting that fence, I never used to do that. I always smash through that when I'm doing my reviews and all sorts, and then recently I nearly did the same thing with a collab the other day. Yeah, so I think it was like, didn't need to be artificially held back because they never planned on adding all-wheel drive. And I can kind of tell that because with the front axle, now when you choose all-wheel drive and they put the diff on, it just sticks a diff on the front axle, whereas it's not like a purpose-made front axle that's straight and in line with the centre of the wheels. If you actually look at the front axle, it's kind of like the axle goes along and then it sort of the angle of it changes back up and then joins to the middle of the wheels. So yeah, it's basically, I know they didn't have this planned long term, they just added all-wheel drive because I assume most people just were never driving the thing, and they've made it more relevant, which is a good move by the game. But because of that, I reckon there's a few situations where it kind of... yeah, it actually does feel like quite a nice truck. It doesn't feel like it is being artificially limited, and it certainly isn't the best truck. I mean, it's still limited anyway by the fact that it's not the most powerful in the game, etc. But it doesn't need to be, for the money especially. I mean, as far as choosing my favourite trucks go, I'm not really bothered about the money because I'll buy whatever. If it's good, I'll pay 200 grand for it or whatever. See, flying down those roads, by the way, I do like flying along the road in this sort of thing. Obviously, because it's a highway truck, it does handle the roads very nice. The steering's pretty nice and fluent. I flew off there for no apparent reason. There's a really strong sort of current coming in from there, and that isn't an accurate representation of how they float, really. A lot of them seem to just plummet to the ground there and do all sorts of weird things. But yeah, this is another reason I enjoy it. It has no in-game purpose, so to speak, but just sticking well, I turn all-wheel drive back off, ironically, like, as soon as I get all-wheel drive, one of the first things I do is turn it off, but yeah, turn it off, stick it into high range, and then turn the all-wheel drive back on, and it glitched there, but I just wanted to say, fuck that post. Hate that bloody thing. Yeah, I like flying down here when I'm ramming vehicles, when I'm flying stuff off cliffs, when I'm just messing around, or I want to test the physics or something, or yeah, just do a good old Jeff special and go flying off the cliff. And that's originally when I started using this truck, is when Jeff told me about like the speed boost thing. But still, it was only for like, yeah, fun and games. But now with the all-wheel drive, I honestly think it's pretty decent. And when I flew off there, it landed on its wheels, which it's not bad for it. It's not the best, but drove out of there okay. There's just one last little go. This is the sort of thing, just when I'm messing around, why not? Yeah, pop in the Jeff Special. For some reason, it likes to pull to the right on this runway. It's not just this truck. Like, it literally pulls you over towards where that post sits. It has ruined many a nice runway attempts. So, of course, I wouldn't even be entertaining it as my top 10 favourite vehicles or whatever if I couldn't pop a loaf in the back and go driving around. I can put it in there pretty quick now. Yeah, that's what she said, definitely. But yeah, as you can see, I mean, we're on the snowy bits now. This is not that super snow crazy stuff, really. But, point being, got a sideboard on, got the loaf on. I could have put a roof rack on, but I wasn't particularly heading anywhere to do anything anyway, so yeah, but it actually does travel along pretty nicely. I'm in high gear, so it's not really going to, like, a lot of trucks sort of sit at this speed, but some trucks aren't capable of sitting at this speed, especially in that sort of snow. I get back to the road now, so it's not as bad, but even when I did hit those rocks, funny enough actually, that was another reason why I ended up switching from the ANK, because it felt like it took hits pretty easily as well, just random hits where, like I said, I think they got the damage turned up too high. For the first month or so of the game, I think they had the damage pretty much spot on, where if you took the piss, you definitely smash your trucks a bit. And I like damaging my trucks in this game, by the way. I'm not like, when I get little bits of road damage, I like that because they obviously have to accelerate wear and tear, like in real life. You know, well, or should I say in this game, you're not going to go driving around doing 8-hour shifts in a truck, so yeah, they have to accelerate it, but there is still too much of, like, you go 2 mile an hour, clip a rock, and it deletes half your suspension. But I think this thing was pretty decent for taking hits at the speed it goes and stuff. The ANK, to be honest, when it had raised suspension, it was flipping quite a bit, but then when it had lowered suspension, I feel like it was taking a lot of hits. But yeah, when I actually thought about it and tested them all out and that, I do kind of feel like this one overall is a more accurate representation of a cheap truck that's pretty fun. And I was considering, it's certainly, the thought crossed my mind of something like the Zix. And as much as the Zix will be pretty close to 10, sort of after that, it's got too much cab weight and it dances around on its nose too much to be like a serious... It's fun for half an hour, and I still do take the Zix out every now and then and just have a little mad 5 minutes and stuff. But yeah, overall it's, they need to calm down with some of that cab weight, really. I'd say in real life. And again, that's not arcade, well, I say arcade versus sim. In real life, I believe a hell of a lot of the weight is in the chassis. A cab is largely fresh air, seats and a steering wheel. A chassis is like, well, the engine gearbox is usually level with it, and yeah, big fat ladder frame chassis and rear axle and stuff is it shouldn't be as front heavy as it is. Whereas this is actually very nicely balanced, all things considering. I'd say when you're towing quite heavy stuff, the nose of it could do with being a little bit more weighty, but overall it's not the end of the world. Now I had a feeling here, and I've not actually, this is genuinely my first ever try, but I wanted to try one of the trucks that couldn't knock all the trees down, and obviously stick a loaf in it and have a go with that. I did the dolphin and loaf when I did these trees, but the dolphin just smashes through these anyway. But this thing couldn't last time, whereas now, because I got a loaf in there and it's got a bit more weight to it, and I'm still in high gear anyway, which it winds up like to its full potential in the high, whether you got the loaf on or off, sideboard on or off, etc. And because of that, I just reckon that extra little bit of weight smashing into the trees. And there is a little glitch here, I apologise, you can see from the fuel it's like, it was a half-second glitch or whatever, but out to get me at the worst time. The game couldn't handle what was going on. But I was genuinely first and only attempt, and I just nailed straight through both sides of trees. Which, yeah, I quite like that as well. I mean, Loaf's goddamn professional, so I suppose I never should have had a doubt. But the fact that I can go flying around in this thing and make pretty decent progress along the roads, and again, I wouldn't recommend it on Zimnigorsk and things like that. I've not been sort of too adventurous on Lake Cobd with this thing, but then in its defence, the ANK out of anything, it's not very keen on snow, and because I've been on Lake Cobd a bit more recently, as obviously that's one of the newer maps and stuff, yeah, I've not used the ANK a hell of a lot recently. I do like about the ANK though that it's definitely got some good towing potential to it. Like, I did a few 10 cargo missions with the sideboard filled and 2 trailers and stuff, and it was a little bit iffy, but it did pretty well considering how early in the game I found it, and yeah. And I like the speed of the ANK, but yeah, just until they add some weight into the chassis so it doesn't tip as much, it just slightly got bumped off the list basically and swapped. And I'm more happy with this decision, if I'm honest. Like, a few hours in getting the ANK footage, I was kind of like, well, I'm not really happy about doing this as number 9, because I kind of don't feel like it's, yeah, it's not really floating my boat at the minute. Whereas this thing, I have to say, is, and especially for the money. I mean, obviously, we all get it free, like the first truck you find in the game, but even if you have sold it, it's not like it's 130 to 200 grand to replace. And just to let you know, because I mean, let's say, Loaf's goddamn horse of a vehicle, I rolled the GMC. Yeah, the GMC wouldn't start, so I recovered it. Loaf is ready to go. That's why you take a Loaf with you. And then just lastly, I suppose, it was only my curiosity. I'm certainly not recommending this as a thing to do with the vehicle. It was just, yeah, I was curious myself. I picked a vehicle to stick on a low loader trailer. Fits like a beauty. And I mean, I know at the minute I'm on the highway, or tarmac or whatever at least, so it was never going to be ridiculous, but stick it in high, starts pulling along. Even when I was in auto, it's still climbing up the gears. I think I got to about 6 gear out of 8, which I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest. I have had some trucks that have 4th, 5th, kind of trying to like get out of them sometimes when you're pulling a pretty heavy load. And yeah, even as I go off the road here, going through this muddy bit, stick it straight in high, it's sat at around the same speed and we're off, which, again, at this point it was kind of for my own curiosity, and I was pretty happy with how it did now. And like I say, I'd much rather take like the Club or something if I had to tow this setup somewhere, but yeah, I have to say as well, just quickly, to this trailer's credit, I used it ages ago and it kept disconnecting like mad off the saddle high, or whatever the bloody other call it, 5th wheel. I've been using it the last 4 or 5 days, a week or whatever, and I don't believe it's disconnected once yet. So I assume they've fixed, like, whatever, why ever it was doing that a lot. So it's more viable now. Like, I like using the Tatrin, but I don't like driving it to a place that's too far away, so I end up not using it a lot. Whereas in certain situations I might consider more now, just I'll bang a low loader trailer on, stick the Tatrin on the back, and then I can go fly in there at, yeah, more like high range gearbox speeds, and then do what I want to do with the Tatrin once I'm there. So it's sort of nice to test the trailer out. Just a couple of quick notes. I got here and it was fine in low range and that. Once you tow in heavy loads, if you look at the fuel, you're talking 15-20 litres a minute. And even though it's got a pretty decent sized fuel tank, if you're going along in this sort of terrain, that'll add up. So again, I'm not recommending, this isn't necessarily the 10 best trucks. It's like my 10 favourite trucks. But I would say those two lists would largely coincide. But yeah, there's a few where I would say the Voron AE is still objectively better than this. I don't like the steering, and I don't enjoy it because of that, because it just drives me mad how it's too slow. Whereas at least this sort of thing was set up for highway driving, where you're going to be going a bit more, like, well, yeah, travelling a bit faster, and therefore the steering feels like it's quite nicely set up for that sort of pace. The Voron feels like it's set up for wading through mud in Zimnegorsk, which is great for when you're doing that, but not for anything else really. Not for quick reaction sort of things anyway. So yeah, I mean, that's about it with this truck. I definitely would recommend it now if you can get the all-wheel drive. Somebody said, by the way, that they didn't have the DLC and they were able to go online and find the upgrade on someone's game who has got the DLC, and I believe they were able to keep all-wheel drive. I can't confirm that, but I'm just throwing it out there while I remember. Yeah, overall though, tonight I had a pretty good time doing a couple of laps with it, and it did everything pretty well. So yeah, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.